this episode of the Kansas Moonshot Podcast, where we are shining the spotlight on amazing things happening in schools across the state. Whether you're one of the Mercury, Gemini, or in the near future Apollo schools launching some amazing redesign plans, or a teacher trying to do something a little different, I want to share your story. The goal is to celebrate the awesomeness all around us. This week's episode features my interview with Tammy Mitchell, the elementary school guide. She has worked with Mercury and Gemini schools as they navigate the redesign process. Here's some of her background and some of the amazing things she's seen in the redesign elementary schools. Check it out.
Okay, so thank you for being on the podcast. First off, if you could just start by introducing yourself and tell us a little bit about of your background in teaching.
Sure. So my name is Tammy Mitchell, and I'm the elementary redesign specialist at the Kansas State Department of Education. I have a bachelor's degree in elementary education from Wichita State University. I have a master's degree in curriculum leadership from Emporia State University, and I'm working on I'm working on my doctorate degree in educational leadership from Kansas State University. So I am a Kansas girl. I began my teaching career out in Holyrood, Kansas, where I taught elementary school for several years. I taught in Great Bend. I taught in Junction City. I have taught 3-year-old preschoolers up through grade 4. Somewhere along my career, I decided that when the kids got to be taller than me, I probably didn't want to teach them anymore. And I'm kind of short. So by the time they're 4th graders, they're looking me pretty much in the eye. So I'm a mother of 2 grown sons. They're 27 and 25. And since being at the State Department of Education, I started here 5.5 years ago, and I have worked to lead the Kansas Learning Network and supported focus and priority schools that were identified under NCLB. And then I oversaw the beginning of the Kindergarten Readiness Initiative before taking this position in July of 2017.
Excellent. So you are the elementary guru for this redesign process. Is that right? The guide.
Yes, I support the school leaders in their elementary redesigns. And so I know my colleague Jay Scott is the secondary specialist, and I know that he's been on this podcast before. So we have the same job. We just focus on a different age group of students.
Excellent. So you get the chance to actually go to a lot of the elementary schools that are doing these redesigns, and you've heard a lot of redesign plans. So are you seeing any trends, anything that there are like multiple schools that are trying out that maybe they're having some success with?
I'm sure. I think that as we move to personalized learning in the core content areas, that is a big shift and it's a big lift. Schools are trying to figure out how to manage that. They're trying to increase the rigor of their instructional practices and use a variety of learning management systems to keep track of student data. I also see where elementary schools are working really hard to bring experiences into the school day or into the student's school experience. That looks a little different around the state. Some are jumping directly into project-based learning. Others are trying to bring 4-H or Scout-like projects and activities into the school day. Community Elementary in Coffeyville is bringing in career pathways and career exposure into their activities. So we have 4 redesign principles, and all of the schools are working towards knitting those things together in ways that make sense to their local communities. A huge emphasis on social emotional learning, and really, how do you make social emotional learning the common thread throughout a student's school day, where the academics are taught as a layer on top of that social emotional learning. So a lot of exciting things that are being prototyped and refined. Our launch schools are well down that path, and then we're bringing along Gemini 2 schools, and they're in their planning year.
Excellent. And so I like that you brought up that SEL piece, because I feel like, I mean, especially at the elementary level, they've got to have that foundation. And, there's a lot of support systems, a lot of things you have to get in place that makes secondary so much easier when they come up to us. So that's amazing that is such a big focus.
A lot of the data points that we're looking at with redesign include high school graduation, post-secondary success, individual plans of study. And so sometimes elementary teachers can feel really far removed from those types of lag measures. I mean, they're lag measures for high school, but if you think about a kindergarten teacher, that is such a long lag measure. So what elementary schools are really focusing on is how do they help all children be healthy, happy, well-adjusted human beings, and how do we send them off to middle school with that social emotional health, the mental health, and the cognition needed, so that middle school teachers have an easier job eventually because they're receiving students that have a different skill set.
Absolutely. And I mean, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but academically, there's not a whole lot you can accomplish if they don't have those basic foundational needs met, those social emotional needs met. So I love that focus. So there are a lot of schools that are, like you said, you mentioned the Gemini 2 schools that are just now, they're in their planning phase. So what advice do you have to schools that are listening right now that are in that planning process? What advice do you have for those schools that are in that process right now?
Well, the thing about redesign is that it is a process. It's not a product. And so schools that think that their final product is to have a redesign plan are really missing the mark. It's the most important thing is to learn the design thinking process and learn how to apply it to every decision that your school makes. And that's a culture shift. Before, when we did problem solving in schools, we would kind of guess about the problem and then we would come up with a solution. And in design thinking, we start with empathizing with the user or the stakeholder or the students, and really trying to look at the situation from their perspective before we define the problem and then ideate multiple solutions and narrow that down to prototypes. And so really embedding that design thinking is huge. And then also, really creating and fostering that teacher-led culture. Redesign is different than school improvement efforts of the past, because this is not a top-down where the building leader or the superintendent is leading the work. This really has to be done at the teacher level, because the teachers are the ones who are the closest to the students. They're the ones that know what students need. And so really building that teacher leadership culture is absolutely imperative.
Well, and even having you guys, you and Jay, I know Westview feels the same way, that you guys came in as our guides on the side that's cheering us on and giving us suggestions and feedback and helping guide us. But it's been very much teachers are leading the way and you guys are helping us along. And I think that's, for me, it's been one of the greatest support systems, is knowing that you guys are right there along with us, encouraging us and helping us find resources. So I think that's been a huge part of this, is having that support system that says, hey, we're going to walk alongside you, not direct you where to go, but help you get where you want to go. And so that's been a huge plus.
Well, and that's a little different role than what people think of as the State Department of Education. And so I'm glad to hear you say that, because we've been very, very intentional that we're here to support. We're running alongside. It's not our role to direct schools or districts in exactly what they want, what they need to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we got Gemini 2 schools that are planning, but we also have those Mercury schools that are they're in the heart of it right now in that launch year. And especially this time of year, I mean, it gets a little tough between that Thanksgiving break to Christmas break. So what advice do you have those schools they're in the middle of it right now in that Mercury launch phase? What advice do you have to those schools?
Well, I would say that not only do we have the Mercury schools that have launched, but we have some Gemini 1 schools that have launched. And so,
oh, that's right.
So total, we've got 14 elementary schools that launched their redesign plans in August. And I would say overall, it was really challenging from the beginning of school until about Thanksgiving. But schools now are saying, they're hitting their groove, things are working, they are using design thinking, they're pivoting as needed. And so I think that they're finally getting to feel like they have a little more experience. So I would say that, it was kind of the opposite. August and September were a little bumpy because they were trying to scale things that they tried in isolation last year. But now I think they're feeling pretty good about where they are, and they're starting to see some very interesting data, academic and some qualitative data that supports their decisions.
Awesome. Yeah, it's good to hear that people are starting to gain that momentum, and that's also helpful to the Gemini schools as they're planning, those Gemini 2 schools as they're planning, to know that there are going to be some patches maybe at the beginning that are a little bit tougher, but it gets better. Every day it gets a little bit better, a little bit easier. Some of the bugs get worked out, but like you said, it was a process that you're going through.
Yes, and we have to model growth mindset. We want students to have it, but we've got to be willing to model it ourselves, and that means trying things that may not work really smoothly the first time. In fact, I would say in any redesign, if it's going too smoothly, I would question whether thinking big enough.
I like what you said about how modeling that for students, that this is challenging. We have to realize that we have to have that growth mindset too. And I almost think that like letting students know, hey, this is a time that was really tough and it didn't necessarily go the way I wanted, and let them see that you did have times like that. Because sometimes I think we want to hide it a little bit and not let the kids see that there are moments when things don't go the way they're supposed to. But sometimes they need to know that you make mistakes too, and that it doesn't always go your way.
Exactly. Yeah, they need to see us fail.
So you mentioned, I've been hearing a lot about Apollo. So can you explain what exactly the Apollo, the next step is going to be?
Oh, well, sure. So the official announcement hasn't quite been made, but we are talking about launching Apollo, and that application will open sometime around the end of January, 1st of February. The commissioner and the deputy commissioner will do a webinar, and Apollo is coming up next. We're looking for schools and districts that want to redesign. The same qualifications would apply: 80% vote of the staff, approval of your local negotiating body, and approval of your local board. What's different for Apollo, though, is that instead of requiring one elementary and one secondary, we're really opening it up. So if there's one school in a district that wants to redesign, whether it's elementary or secondary, we'll take those applications. What we saw in Gemini 2 was districts wanting to redesign every school in their district, and we'll take that on as well. So trying to loosen the reins a little bit, where if there's one school in a district that wants to redesign, we encourage them to apply.
So really, it's just each cycle is expanding out, and bringing more schools into this process.
Yes. I mean, our goal is to have all schools redesigned by 2026. And so, we're not going to, we limited the first round with the Mercuries because we needed test sites and observation locations as fast as possible. but now we're scaling it as fast as schools want to come on board.
Well, that's fantastic. That's great to hear, and great to hear that there's so much change happening across the state. I just wanted to thank you for being on the podcast. I appreciate you coming on. And I know that all the elementary schools have been really grateful for your support walking alongside them. So thank you very much. If people want to follow you on social media, what's the best way to do that?
Sure. Please follow us at KSDE Redesign. Jay and I both tweet under that address. And then if people have specific questions, please go ahead and email me. My email is tmitchell, TMITCHELL @ksde.org.
Excellent. And I'll also include that in the show notes so that if anybody needs it, they can click on it and email you and ask for any advice. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Josh.
One final little shameless plug here. If you have the opportunity, you should definitely check out the MACE conference, which is February 28th and March 1st. This is a great conference, one of the best that I've been to, where it integrates technology with practical strategies, and it's just a great conference to go to if you want to figure out how to combine technology and education. Come see me. I'll be one of the spotlight speakers there, but there are some phenomenal sessions from speakers all across the state. So if you get the opportunity, definitely check it out. That's it for this episode. For more information about this episode, check out my website, mrstockrocks.com. If you know someone doing something awesome in their classroom, let me know about it. I'd love to have them on the show. You can email me at teachlikeaninja@gmail.com or follow me on Twitter at teachlikeaninja. I've been your host, Josh Stock, 6th grade language arts teacher and self-proclaimed awesomeness expert. Until next time, book it forward and be awesome.